fuck, Sean, your fucking angle is so shit. Stand closer. Oh my fucking god.
You just had him screw up the shot, Nikki. Shut the fuck up! Eat my damage, bitch. Chris Surge. He wasn't scheduled for today's flight. Like, what the fuck?
You just died!
What the hell just happened? What the?
Oh, they both died. Oh,
Okay, he was downed, but he downed me. Like,
I died. Oh,
I can't. Okay, I am totally.
wins.
I am totally. Hey, what is going on, my fellow godlies? Vance here from Warframe God Builds, and today is a pretty special day because not only is it my 28th birthday, but we're also going to be taking a look at Saryn Prime. Saryn Prime, that's what I said. Now, Saryn Prime's been a Warframe that's been requested for a long time. In fact, she's been the most requested since Season 2, and her component blueprints can be dropped from Kayla to Thame on Sedna. But if you want the Prime version, you're going to have to take a look at the relics on the Wikia, because that's the only way you're going to get a hold of Saryn Prime at this rate. I must admit, I was never a big fan of Saryn, but I could see why a lot of veteran players are looking for a new way to build for Saryn, specifically because of the rework that came earlier this year. Saryn is incredibly unique because of this rework, and in current form we're going to have to explain her abilities as is. Alright, so Saryn's abilities read as the following. Spores inflict target with viral damage over time. Destroying the spore will spread it to nearby enemies. This power does exactly as advertised. Upon casting your first ability, you will see tumors that pop up out of your enemy. And when you destroy this tumor, if there's enemies in the vicinity, they will be affected by it too. And this pairs really well with Molt. Molt shedding her skin like a snake, Saryn leaves a decoy behind to draw the fire from enemies. This works really well with the augment for regenerative Molt, as you can use this as not only a form of distraction, but as a means to regenerate your health. And thus you can also cast spores upon the Molt and then throw something like a Torrid or Pox on it to do loads of damage. As you're letting the smoke destroy the tumors, you can keep casting the spores, which will stack the damage that's coming into the enemies. Now, her third ability is something that I don't use a whole lot. I don't find it to be useful, but if you wanted to do a melee build, it would be perfect for this. Toxic Lash. When active, melee strikes burst spores, causing them to spread to nearby enemies. And because of the augment, it leaves an obnoxious cloud around that will continue to do damage over time. Finally, Miasma. Saryn pollutes the atmosphere with a lethally poisoning mist that corrodes all enemies in rage, deals additional damage to enemies under toxin and viral effects. Now, this used to be the nuke, the press 4 to win ability, and because of the rework, it's something that does more damage over time and takes a big chunk out of their health rather than just all at once. So it's really up to you how you use it. I highly recommend your first ability along with all your other abilities. Saryn is one of those warframes where you really have to wear down the enemy, and she's really good at doing that. She eats through armor like nobody's business. Now, taking a look at the build, I opted for strength, range, and duration. Prime flow, rage, intensify, overextended, prime continuity, transient fortitude, regenerative molt, and vitality are all present in this setup. Now, I thought it would be appropriate to explain rage further with this build, distinctly because a lot of people have been asking me why I include rage in a lot of my setups. Well, for other warframes, I really just include it because it converts 40% of the damage into energy. We may not need the energy for other warframes, but the 40% negation of damage is really crucial to some of those tankier builds that really need the extra defense. For Saryn specifically, though, we do need the energy return because she burns through energy a lot. She's kind of a caster, and she kind of has a problem with efficiency. There's a lot of people who build for efficiency, but because we don't and we rely on the generic lens, we need to include this not only to negate the 40% damage, but also to return energy. Prime flow and vitality are pretty obvious reasons. But prime continuity is present because we want to have a big window of opportunity to affect the enemies with the spores and the miasma. Intensify and transient fortitude to increase the effectiveness of those powers, overextended to meet the maximum amount of range for this build. And then we've already covered regenerative molt. This is going to be very crucial to in-game content. This mod is an absolute must. It will save your skin on multiple occasions, and you can use it for a lot of different casting purposes as well. Power drift is pretty common, 15% power strength. Obviously we're going to opt for that, and the 30% chance to resist knockdown is nice as well. But the other mod that I haven't really mentioned at this point is the newest mod that has been presented to the game, and I'm really glad that we held off on the Saryn build for so long because we gave a chance for this mod to be present, and oh boy does it help tremendously. Growing Power is an aura mod which the status procs increase power strength by 25% for 6 seconds. Now what this means is you're going to have status weapons in your arsenal. You're going to have to affect the enemy with the status proc. This does not count for molt. So what I would recommend doing is casting molt, putting the spores on it, throwing a pox or a torrid on it. That way you can get the maximum amount of damage possible. And then attacking the enemy, that way you can proc the growing power, and you will receive a 25% power strength increase on top of everything else we have here. You're going to be seeing devastating numbers. It won't look like much at the start, but after this gets procced, don't be surprised if you are the top damage dealer after the end of every mission. Now it's worth stating that if you're more melee centric, you can always replace Rage with the Contagion Cloud. That way whenever you cast Toxic Lash, you're going to be running around and you're going to be producing toxic clouds that deal 150 toxin for 12 seconds. However, I think that survivability is more important for my build, so feel free to change it up at your leisure. Now for primary weapons, I chose to roll with Kohm. If you remember correctly, we featured this build back at the Warframe God Builds Excalibur, but it has seen some updates since, and the reason why it's incredible for this particular setup is because the 92.9% status chance coupled with the high fire rate of 10.27. Because of this high fire rate and high status chance, all of these mods together are going to make it so you proc growing power very often, and thus you really only have to worry about casting your spores and then popping the tumors when you're doing run and gun missions such as Exterminate. Otherwise, you can leave all your other powers for more bunkered down missions like Excavation or Defense. The only time I really have to worry about my other powers is in the high level Exterminates, where I'm really only going to cast Molt to get my health back. For secondaries, I've once again chosen to use the Pox, and it's no surprise here, as we discussed earlier, these are incredibly essential for loading up your molt with the spores and then popping them instantly with the pox. It's really good for casting your molt, throwing the pox on the molt, then casting spores over and over and over again so you can really stack the damage. On top of that, you can also throw it at an enemy, which is going to proc that growing power we've discussed so much, and you're really going to be cranking out the damage, minus the fact that you haven't even touched miasma yet, which is really your ultimate finisher right then and there. Just note that if you're going to use Pox or something like Torrid, it's really kind of geared towards missions where you're bunkered down and trying to do a lot of damage. It's incredibly helpful in sorties where enemies have augmented armor because she's going to chew straight through that armor and go through the health. I find this to be exceptionally useful against the Corpus augmented shields as well. So I'll go ahead and throw up that Torrid build for you to see, and then we'll move on to our companion. Okay, so for companions, I'm choosing to roll with Djinn, and it's because Djinn starts by mesmerizing all enemies in range and lures them towards the player. If it succeeds at attracting enough prey into striking distance, it sprays an acid attack that does damage over time and eats away at enemy armor while they writhe in pain. Does that sound familiar? Other than Meta Ray and Animal Instinct, which are absolutely necessary, these are all preference mods and you can build how you wish. The weapon of choice for this Sentinel is also of your choice, but I'm going with Volclock because it's got a decent status chance and you just can't beat that range. Now, as long as we're being honest here, I really wish that Digital Extremes would release something like a Sentinel repair kit for your gear, because companions like Vats or Kubros can be revived, whereas if a Sentinel dies, then we too have to die and then revive, wasting one of those revives just to get our Sentinel back, and it's kinda stupid. Last thing that I want to talk about is something that I always cover at the climax of these build videos. That's the Zeneric lens. As we discussed before, Saryn has quite the issue with efficiency, and because of this particular setup, you're going to need Zeneric lens. On top of that, you're going to need energy overflow maxed out, which I haven't quite got there just yet. Also, don't be a scrub like me, go for Systemic Override. With this passive, Void Pulse increases its efficiency of Warframe abilities by 20% for 15 seconds. And the more you upgrade this baby, the more that efficiency is going to go up, and that's something that you absolutely need with Saryn. So in conclusion, I found the reworked version of Saryn Prime to be the superior damage dealer. However, there are some veterans who would argue that the OG Saryn was the superior version of her, though I would say that they don't understand damage over time, which is kind of superior to damage all at once, which is going to fall off at some point. So if you like this video, as always, smash that like button, share, tune in to this new series that we're working on called God Builds Reforged, where we talk about some of the commenters and why we build the way that we build more in depth. And on top of that, I do streams 6 p.m. New York time every Saturday on my Twitch page. So if you're not following me there, go check me out. And if you want to make sure that you're up to date with all the things that I'm doing, also follow my Twitter. And until next time, peace.